Welcome back, Nerglings. Today we are taking a look at my men, monsters and mutants. But before we start, be sure to like, share and subscribe so you don't miss an update. Here we go. We've finally got around to the most diverse and interesting collection of miniatures in the Beastmen army, my mutants. They are a fine selection of classic Citadel, Eureka miniatures, Pendragon miniatures, Creative Sculpt, Satire Art Studios, Brugelberg, Raupatha Europe and Farmyard Animals. Amongst the Citadel miniatures there is an old hammer troll, some night horrors, mutant beastmen, gore, a scared Empire chap hiding, some noblars and a beastman shaman. The Eureka Chaos Army is featured heavily in my own Chaos Army, the main belligerents hauling my giant Chaos battering ram, whilst the smaller chaps have been subsumed into my Children of Chaos unit. Meanwhile, Pendragon Miniatures has supplied a fantastic cross-section of freakish models to build up the second unit of 20. I had some spare Creative Sculpt familiars and smallish models to add to my large Children of Chaos unit. Satire Art Studios supplied the marvellous Blemmies, or gents with faces in their torsos. Of course, I couldn't forget the mad children from the Brugelberg release. They fit in perfectly with the rest of the oddities, so I based them up on the same 20mm squares and included them too. Raupatha Europe kindly provided a Beastman shaman. At least I think it was Raupatha Europe. I guess it could have been Iron Winds in equal measure. Finally, I used some farmyard animals to bring out the chaotic nature of the army even more. Namely, in the use of Brian Ansell's head on the body of a swan, no less. As is my modus operandi throughout the rest of the army, I have concentrated on squeezing as many unique models into this collection as I can. There are lizardmen, beastmen, children, mutants, animals and the like throughout each of the units. I've gone for units led by witches and sorcerers. The two main units of 20 each have a powerful Beastman shaman as their leader, whilst the Children of Chaos unit is led by an evil witch banished to the border regions by her hateful neighbours. Finally, the small skirmishing unit made up of some of the most mutated creatures in the army is led by a mutated matron-like Skeksis creature. In battle, I would imagine these strange bodies would be used in one key way: to slow down larger forces in order for the Bestigor, Korngor and Pestigor to assault their flanks. Being placed in locations to take the brunt of charges and probably being too stupid or cowardly to put up much of a fight, they would break and flee, whilst the elite units prepare ambushes to account for their inevitable cowardice. Chaos Mutant is the name given to a host of different beings found throughout the old world and beyond. They are beings who have been warped by the power of chaos into horrible monstrosities. During the War of the Wizards, vast magical energies were unleashed, and these energies altered the life forms living in the centre of the continent, creating Chaos Mutants. Other unscrupulous sorcerers and warlords have since experimented with creating their own mutants. Meanwhile, the corrupting influence of chaos itself has led to many mothers giving birth to strangely shaped babies along the northern borders Mutants include those with chaos mutations, as well as those that develop them later in life, often known as turnskins. Mutants range from individuals desperate to belong to the rest of society, who conceal their deformity to the best of their ability, to those that embrace chaos completely, join a cult, and thus turn all their efforts to overthrowing the Empire. Regardless of their intentions, many mutants try to live as humans, if their mutations will permit, of course. If not, they are only alive because they either fled from the authorities or they were abandoned in the woods as children, and the life of an outcast is the only one they'll ever know. Some, particularly those with animalistic appearances, may be adopted by Beastmen warbands. Whilst the Empire is far from the Chaos Wastes, most of its citizens wouldn't dream of risking their souls through the worship of the Chaos Gods. However, mutant children are occasionally born, and some adults find themselves being altered in later life, even in centres of civilization such as Altdorf. Scholars provide a number of possible reasons for these occurrences. Morrslieb, the smaller of the world's two moons, is alleged to consist wholly of warpstone. The light of the moon is said to cause mutation in those who dally too long beneath it. Warpstone dust is sometimes blown in on strong northerly winds, and shards of it fall from the night as meteors. People say that wizards who cast spells too recklessly risk mutation, and that trafficking with demons or the undead is a surefire path to mutation. Many believe that mutation can result from sinful behaviour and imperious desires. Certainly, in the name of Slaanesh, this is known to be true. The authorities of the Empire take a hard line on mutants. Ancient edicts deem them tainted by chaos, and therefore enemies to be destroyed. No matter how rational or benign a particular mutant might appear. Imperially sanctioned witch hunters and members of the knightly orders track down and kill mutants with the same pitiless zeal they show sorcerers and demons. Nobles and town councils levy bounties on mutants as aggressively as they do on outlaws and marauding goblins. Folk in the Empire tend to regard mutants as physically disgusting and morally abhorrent. Whenever a mutant amongst them is exposed, many people gather in droves to witness its execution. The preferred way to put a mutant to death is to burn it at the stake, a spectacle sure to delight any crowd. Witch hunters who uncover a number of mutants in one area have been known to hold them prisoner for weeks before their execution. News of such a mass burning can draw crowds from miles around and works wonders for a witch hunter's reputation. Thus, to survive these most dangerous of times, a mutant must be especially resourceful or lucky. Those who find themselves altered by mutation do not immediately fall into the worship of chaos, despite the proclamations of nobles and priests. To develop a mutation is an incredibly distressing occurrence. Not only does the unfortunate mutant find his own flesh in revolt. But his neighbours will view him with horror and sell him out to the authorities, assuming they don't just kill him themselves. There are those who find it hard to turn over mutants. Some parents of mutant infants don't have the stomach to conspire in their offspring's execution. In rural areas, it is common for parents to leave such babes in the woods. The luckier mutant children abandoned in this way are discovered by roving herds of beastmen who raise them as their own. Whilst the unlucky, well, let's not dwell on such things. It is a widespread belief that as a mutant's body changes, his mind warps as well. Certainly, priests of Sigmar teach that mutation and wickedness go hand in hand, and that the deformities mutants bear are a mark of the malice in their souls. Most other religious authorities in the Empire agree. Even relatively broad-minded experts on the subject of mutation state that to become a mutant marks the beginning of an inescapable moral degradation that mirrors the corruption of the body wholesale. Some members of the Shalian and Varanen cults defy conventional views of mutation. Such radicals are careful in voicing their beliefs, for their superiors invariably support the authorities on the matter, but they privately assert that judging people based on appearance is wrong. Rumours persist of certain remote temple hospices that offer mutant sanctuary, even treatment. Senior members of the cult are quick to hush up such gossip. Some mutants seek the aid of medical professionals. This is a risky business, as many physicians would sooner alert the authorities than attempt to treat a mutant. That said, a minority of them are open-minded enough, or venal enough, to attempt surgical removals of mutated body parts. Even if a mutant is lucky enough to find a sympathetic physician, his problems are not over, however. Undergoing surgery is a dangerous business in the Empire at the best of times. Infection and inevitable death is the remit for most who go under the surgeon's knife. Indeed, most mutants are too poor to afford a competent surgeon, and don't have the connections to find sanctuary amongst radical cults. They try to remain inconspicuous amongst the ranks of paupers who inhabit urban rookeries. Some of them may be able to conceal their afflictions indefinitely, though most will either be exposed as mutants and executed, or inducted into the ranks of chaos cults where they make useful pawns. Many scholars in Altdorf are aware of the sad fate of the Bretonnian playwright Bruno Malvoisin, whose work, The Baneful Lusts of Diego Brasach, was rumoured to be so salacious that it delighted Slanesh himself. Bruno allegedly became a mutant shortly after the play was premiered, developing a rill of tentacles around his neck and other deformities. He vanished before the witch hunters found him, but his fate remains a warning to all those who mock the gods. Such a cautionary tale is typical of those that are told to young children who behave badly, or take the names of the gods in vain. Quite what it was that so pleased the Dark Prince of Chaos is unknown, as the play was subsequently banned and all known copies of the first folio were thrown onto a bonfire in Altdorf's Königplatz. It is common for mothers to warn their children off from certain antisocial habits on account of them making a mutant of you. Some naive folk believe such scolding even in adulthood. Common superstition in the old world holds that mutation can result from nose-picking, onanism, pulling faces, refusing to wash behind the ears, disrespecting your elders, and so on. Some optimists believe mutations can be cured. Legend speaks of a young nobleman from the south who was captured by a champion of the dark gods and taken to the Chaos Wastes. Gone but not forgotten, members of his family organised an expedition to rescue him. They did not realise what sort of beast he had become, a hulking creature with a wolf's head and claws. He discarded his bow and rapier, preferring to fight tooth and nail. Confronted with the mutant, a family retainer gave his life in order to save the man who was now a monster. The act of self-sacrifice redeemed the altered beast, who became the young aristocrat he had been before his ordeal. Few tales about mutation end so happily, and the moral guardians of the Empire deny that such a story is true, or even remotely possible for that matter. Interestingly, not all mutants are evil, nor does becoming one immediately render one subservient to the ruinous powers. This is shown in characters like Riekwald Marx, Karl Hock, and even the Forlorn Tower of Usin. Chaos mutants are beings who bear some resemblance to their original race, but now carry one or more gruesome deformities. For instance, a mutated human may have two heads, a beak for a mouth, or tentacles instead of arms. Some chaos mutants, such as the mutant lizardmen, carry a disease that will infect any human that they bite. Rumour has it that it is possible for a victim of chaos mutation to be healed of the disorder and regain their normal physical form, although powerful magics will be required for such an endeavour, and even then there is no guarantee of success. Indeed, to invoke the very powers that cause such mutation in the healing of said affliction raises certain questions about what else you might be required to sacrifice in returning to your original wholesome self. Well, that's just about all I have for you today. Join me next time for some more wargaming content. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.